Um, Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to present the humility in the age of internet. So I'm Jing Wei.
I'm Bowie.
And I'm Mei Ann.
Okay, so this is our index for our presentation today. So I'm going into the internet before internet. Okay, so in order to show that the Pool theory of media evolution explains the rise of the internet, we need to demonstrate two theses first. So the first thesis is the technology behind the internet was available before the internet. Then it makes sense to conclude that people could have developed the internet but didn't because the demand is insufficient. So secondly, we need to show that some new moment in world history made existing media and talking, manuscript writing, printing, and audiovisual media is insufficient for the purposes of some organized group or groups. Then we begin the story of the internet. And it begins in 16th century Europe during the scientific revolution. And there was a project that would end in the internet and was conceived in its modern form. The project was the systematic collection, classification, and dissemination of knowledge for the purpose of scientific progress. And then the initial spurs that urged European thinkers to pay close attention to data gathering, classification, and dissemination were two. So the first spur is the revival of ancient Greek scientific interests and practices. Aristotle and his peers stimulated Europeans to think anew about the world of the senses, and their works were widely available thanks to print. The second spur was imperialism. The people of the Renaissance had the good fortune of discovering new worlds, and when they did, they imported new things from them by the ton. Then later on, Francis Bacon, a proto-information scientist par excellence, which well known for the saying, knowledge is power, outlined a program to banish ignorance and superstition by collecting, measuring, analyzing, and comparing everything. But like many ambitious programs, it failed eventually. But happily, some of Bacon's fellows and followers, which also are the founders of the early scientific societies, were rather practical than he. They not only theorized about collecting and exchanging data, they also created organizations to do it. So, and the result can be seen in the followings. But before these societies, natural philosophers had only very limited means to discuss their work with like-minded colleagues. They created the basic structure for handling scholarly information that persisted until the birth of the internet. And the system comprised three institutions. The first was library, which allowed scientific information to accumulate in one place for easy access. The second one is index, which permitted information in the library to be retrieved. And the third one is article, which can be found in a book or journal, and allowed scientists to share information at a distance. The entire system worked in a loop. So scientists produced journals that fit the libraries that were indexed by bibliographers, then supplied them to scientists who produced more journals and so on. This new system of scholarly communication constituted a real step forward, but it didn't mean it was perfect. The library concentrated information, which was good, but it also isolated information, which was bad. You had to go to the library, it could not come to you. So the indexes also help you to find the information which was good, but also hid information from you which was bad. And then alphabetical or subject indexes generally do not penetrate very far. You can get the author, title, subject headings, and the book's location in the text. So almost everything between the covers is obscured, but you need to know exactly what you were looking for, and this is inconvenient if you don't know quite actually what you want. So next, articles can share scientific information on a specific topic, which was good, but it also share the deficiencies of the library and the index, which was bad. That is, if you didn't have access to the article for whatever reason, it might as well not exist. So the system didn't work for those who wasn't a student or professor at a university. So early as the 18th century, some so try to figure out ways to improve scholarly communications and bring trustworthy knowledge to the people who needed it. So to rectify this sorry situation, Denis Diderot, Jean Le Ron de Lambert, and their philosophy allies revived an old idea, which is the encyclopedia. And then they set themselves the task of compiling all that was true and useful in one place for all time. The result was the epoch-making 35 volume of encyclopedia, but they are limited by the medium in which they were produced, namely print. But the print not only limited the degree to which scholarly communications could be perfected, it also limited the imaginations of people. It also cannot provide a universal store of knowledge in which anything can be found instantly and anything can be amended as needed. Other than that, its bulk and weight makes them unattractive as media. A piece of paper is small and light, but thousands of pieces of paper are big and heavy. So one way to surmount this problem is to shrink the big heavy thing into a small light thing. Therefore, microphotography was invented later on. So microphotography is a collection of books or text published as a small film, like what in the photo. So human use of film photography technology copied from publications such as books, newspapers, magazines on text and pictures, etc. So and produced as a small film. Microfilm can be preserved than the original material for a long time, easy access and easy classification. Then let's talk about the history of microphotography. So Rene Dragon of Paris was given the first microphotography patent in 1859, and his chief product is a tiny image embedded in a tiny viewer embedded in a tiny trinket. Then a few forward-thinking people at the time think that this might be made to serve more practical purposes, but actually no one needed to build the box at the time because the government had more important things to think about rather than putting their achieves on tiny bits of photographic paper. But business didn't. In the early 20th century, everyone began to find themselves having to track millions of transactions, not only deposits and withdrawals, but also checking activities. And so then, in the mid-1920s, New York banker George McCarthy saw in microphotography a potential solution to the bank's paperwork problem. And then this plucky moneyman invented the checograph, which is a device that produces microfilm copies of checks flowing through financial institutions. Then later on, Eastman Kodak loved the checograph, and then he bought in 1928 and began to sell microfilming services under its Kodak brand. By the 1940s, governments, universities, and university libraries and corporations began to film their holdings. And in World War II, the President Franklin Roosevelt stressed the U.S. to microfilm everything. He thinks that so that if any part of the country's original achieves are destroyed, a record of them will exist in some other places. By using this thing. Then later on, the next wave of information scientists had probably used microfilm, so they knew to look elsewhere for inspiration, which is the developing field of information handling machines. The notion that one could use mechanical means, which is like wedges, gears, and levers, and etc., to store information and solve mathematical problems. Then, and so Whenever Bush, an engineer and technological visionary, built the differential analyzer in 1927. That is a device that can solve complicated differential equations. But Bush then pointed out that gummed-up scientific communications are a huge problem. He plainly says that our methods of transmitting and reviewing the results of research are out of date and by now are totally inadequate for their purpose. So researchers produce more useful information than ever, but it's simply lost due to antiquated system of storage, search, and retrieval. In a word, the print paradigm, which is the libraries, indexes, and articles, just wasn't doing the job anymore. After the World War II, the US Defense Department decided to build a computer-aided information network, which is the world's first invention. Made operational in 1959, SAGE means Semi-Automatic Ground Environment, brought everything the decisions makers needed to know, including their radar images and innovation to central locations. SAG also assisted the decision makers via automation in scrambling fighters and guiding them to their airborne targets. But with the fear of being hacked, some young scientists built up a system which called packet switching over a distributed network. It seemed to be a good solution to the problem of network fragility. But scientists working on the new communication system pointed out that computers doing the switching and distributing have to be able to talk to each other. So the scientists proposed a solution that would solve both the general's problem and theirs, which was invent a set of computers and computer protocols that would link not only the defense establishment computers in a distributed network, but theirs as well. So the American government decided to fund and implement this program. So was the Arpanet was born in 1969. But Arpanet wasn't very useful if you weren't a general or a computer scientist. Later on, some communications-hungry scientists which wanted to trade information said that what was needed was a network of networks. As many parties and interests were involved, it took well over a decade, a lot of negotiation and money to create this internetwork. But by the mid-1980s, the internet was alive and well, linking most big institutes and universities in the nation, even overseas. So the internet can exchange messages, files, and run some programs remotely. But at that time, it's very hard to use unless you are an expert. And this borders an English fellow named Tim Berners-Lee. And then he figured that people really wanted out of a network was access to things on computers, but not computer themselves. They wanted to get information in documents, not to connect to computers. So in the early 1990s, he and a French colleague designed a system that used the internet to store, receive, and send documents. And he called his invention the World Wide Web, which we know is www. And then at this point, the internet and the web that ran on top of it were still obscure. And so a team of young college students in Illinois put the computers, or we know desktop PC, internet and the World Wide Web together and create web browser. And then they want to make internet easy to understand. And in 1993, they gave their graphical web browser away under the name Mosaic. So in the mid-1990s, surfing the net became an easy activity like we watch TV at home or yeah. So this is the history of internet before internet. So I will let you guys to watch a video. This is quite a funny video about the life before internet.
Hello? Good morning, Mr. Cooper! How are you today? Sorry, lady Sarangton. And yourself? I'm of good health, young sir. Thank you for asking.
Hey dude, have you seen the new iPhone 6?
You mean this? It's now larger, the sounds are juicier, and the colors more crisp.
Whoa. Wellington, have you heard of the 6th iteration of the new Granny Smith Apple?
Are you talking about this one?
Young man, you should spend less time out gallivanting and more time at home. Ah boy, you go outside and play lah. You don't spend so much time at home.
Lady, may I inquire where we procure such fine good work?
How's the carpet here on the valley?
May thank you.
That's really naughty, sir.
Sorry, just ask you, do you know where I can work?
Have you heard of Google before?
I will.
In touch lah!
What the hell is one scam? How do you get my mail? Appealing to the essence of the audacity. So we beheaded him.
Lady, I did nothing of such sort.
Thomas, your skill is far superior than mine, and I must congratulate you on this victory.
Oh, buddy, you are always so gracious in defeat. I must commend you on that.
Hey man, Dawan, I tell you win, give me chance.
Hey, shut up, Anoop. I own you. Get wrecked.
Don't talk so big, Dawan just having safe face only. Dear darling, I can see the most charming and fairest maiden. But alas, our relationship must remain a secret. Guess who's in a new relationship? Oh yeah! Oh.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about human nature and the internet. So what is human nature? Human nature is the natural disinclination to read and write. Human has the natural disinclination to read and write. And human also have the inclination to watch and listen. Means they will prefer to watch and listen but not to read and write. And what is internet? Internet took off more quickly than audio-visual media. Internet is cover the globe and penetrate every nation on earth. So it did not need to wait for new network to be built. Internet piggyback on other network. Internet does not depends on network, but network depends on internet. So is it something about internet that appeals to our nature, a drive that makes us want it? Yes, the answer is yes. Why? Because humans are designed to solve anomalous and solve puzzle, and internet is a place full of anomalies and puzzle. You can find out anything, no matter how specific it is, and it is likely to return results that surprise you and present things for you to figure out. So, and also because humans naturally find the unusual and curious things entertaining. We also can quickly and easily do research to clear things up. And we can surf from link to link and uncovering more and more information. When we surf from link to link, we can find something relevant, and it's a reason for us to share what we find. To sharing what we find, we provide a larger forum to present human trophies. It is also because of exchange and collaboration on internet. Human desire is to trade information and work together. We also present relevant because it's a native that drive human. Last is posting is the continuation of talking by other means. Other reason that cause human nature and internet link up is human have the desire to participate in something bigger than yourself. And it's also simple elevation of boredom. Because humans find posting and sharing is enjoyable. So, Marsha Poi say, internet like a great game of show and tell, and human like show and tell. There are also pulling forces that pull modern internet into existence, which includes information capitalism, surveillance state, and cultural hedonism. Information capitalism rooted in industrial capitalism is about data handling requirement of modern business. It is the investment in research and development. It can create business machines such as calculating engines, computer, especially PC, means the desktop, and rapid takeoff of webs. Sullivan state is the pursuit of national welfare and the state security. Culture hedonism. Culture liberalism contribute to modern audiovisual media, and the freedom of speech as long as the speech is clean and message are wholesome. Last is the culture of hypocrites. So what the internet did and is doing now? It changed the world of old media such as manuscript writing, printing, talking, and broadcast to the world of new media. New media is those that carry by internet. According to the push theory of media effect, internet have other social practices and value in audiovisual media, and is provide distinct internet culture and ongoing internet era. So I'm now going to talk about accessibility and privacy. Accessibility. So this data show the internet user in the world by region since the date of June 30, 2017. You can see that Asia have the most people access the internet. This is because PC and internet access become less costly in financial and training term nowadays, and internet signal are transmitted over satellites and pick up wireless to difficult, and it is difficult to interrupt. So Marsha Poi also say that internet is a marvel of accessibility. If you want to get on it and use it, you probably can, and if you can't now, you'll be able soon. So, accessible media. Photo diffuse network, which it has the ability to send and receive messages shared by a large proportion of population. In developed countries such as Canada, Japan, South Korea, and Australia, there are 40 to 80% of the population has internet access. Diffuse networks equalize social practices and value evolve in and around them. It provides roughly equal power to send and receive messages. Thus, it is difficult for any particular sender or receiver to monopolize communication. By using unequal to create unequal power. Internet is probably the most democratic place, even though it may be regulated by government, owned by telecom company, dominated by search engines, and manipulated by big corporations. Stephen Hawking said that we are all now connected by the internet, like neurons in a giant brain. So this is a video to show you what is internet accessibility. Okay, so to sum up internet accessibility, in the real world you may have a lot of traits like gender, race, and class to differentiate you from others. But in internet world, you are often a user like any other people. For example, like Bill Gates may be a Facebook user, and I believe most of you are also a Facebook user. So next is the privacy. The differences between real world and internet world. In real world, others decide who you are, and you have only one identity at a time, and you cannot get to change to in identity. And in internet world, you can decide who you are, and you can have multiple identity at a time. you can switch from one identity to another. So, why internet privacy in internet is so important is because you can imagine if some unauthorized people want to see a file you place on internet, they will have know where the file is, and with just a few clicks. Despite of that, firewall can stop them. If they manage to get to it, you can set password to prevent them from accessing your file or your document. But if they still manage to open it, encryption will prevent them from reading it. So here comes the question. The internet then become more private indeed? The answer is no, because if someone really desperate and dedicated, they will still able to hack your document and files. So here is a video for you all to know why we care about internet privacy.
I heard a saying that if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product.
Absolutely. It's absolutely true.
That's Alan Henry from lifehacker.com. So first off, Alan, why should we care about internet privacy?
Every time you click from one website to another, you click on a link to go to the next page, that's information that people are collecting about. That kind of information that you may think is meaningless is the steam that powers a lot of companies.
So if I don't want my personal info to be used by other people to make tons of money, what can I do?
The first step is really for people to understand the transaction that they make when they get something shiny and new that's free. So when you sign up for a new account at whatever service, read the terms of service at least as much as you can. What is it that you're giving up?
Could you give me an example? Like, what if I sign up for a photo sharing site?
Well, congratulations, those photos are now owned by that company. They can be used in advertising efforts, even if those are photos of you and your account.
Oh, ouch. Okay, so what can I do about this?
If you are okay with Facebook and Twitter and Google and these other companies knowing these things about you, then that's fine. If you're not okay, or you want to control when they get information, when they don't, there are a number of browser extensions like Disconnect and Ghostery. All these browser extensions give you control over whether or not the sites that you visit collect information about you and send them to other related companies.
Okay then, my information is important, and I'm going to protect it as best I can.
So at this moment, there are no legitimating doctrine, therefore it was needed for the right to privacy, the harm principle, and obligatory tolerance, which is the gift from pain and audio-visual culture to control the internet privacy. However, internet gives rise to form new routes of extreme private expression that may not have direct equivalent to those earlier age media. Therefore, it may not be fully covered by the inherited doctrine. So, talk about the fidelity of the internet. Is internet a new mode of communication? The answer is no. Internet is old wine in the new bottles. Speech, writing, print, and audiovisual media, as we can see, none of them is new. So, internet is also not a new thing. So, new would be a medium that carries taste, smells, and okay, so low fidelity channel is speech, writing, and print, which generate symbolic networks, and then low fidelity channel means conceptualize social practices developed in and around them. And then high fidelity channel is audiovisual messages, and it generate iconic networks and centralized social practices. Internet is a dual network, so it should do both low fidelity and high fidelity channel. Internet is not the first medium to deliver two channels. As we can see, writing can deliver two. A writer, for example, can draft text and also draw pictures in a sketchbook. And then audiovisual media can deliver too. Also, for example, a TV producer can create a broadcast with both text and images. For example, a film with subtitles. And then talk about Cheap Thrills. Cheap Thrills is stimulating low-cost entertainment. On the production side, the internet enables almost anyone to create or at least copy a picture, a song, or a movie. So on the consumption side, everything on offer, whether copyrighted or not, is free because all the users were doing was sharing. Then the volume. We measure the capacity of media to carry information in terms of chunks and flows. Speech, writing, print message are chunks, and audio visual message is flows. Internet has extraordinary high volume. It currently has too many channels to comprehend, and more are being added at a fantastic rate. The internet has large spare capacity and has hiddenized social practices and values. So in the previous eras before the internet, we made our own fun or paid people to make our fun for us, and it was media. For example, we paid money to watch TV, or yeah. So whatever you want to find or anything you want to share with others, you can just post it online, or everyone can get it. You can simply post a funny video of you yourself to entertain anyone in the world. Then in the audiovisual era, entertainment was then and there. But now on the internet, entertainment is always and everywhere. You can enjoy whatever you like in any time, in any place, and yeah. But internet also can cause many different effects, like for example, is cyber slacking. So a modern example is staff who use their work internet access for personal reasons while maintaining the appearance of working, which can cause insufficient in his work. So yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you, Lydia. So next, I will be explaining about the velocity, range, persistence, and also searchability of the internet. So first off, velocity of the internet. The internet is a high velocity medium. Internet allows you to create and transmit messages in several formats very quickly, and thereby facilitates discussion. You can compose and send messages very quickly, and others can also respond to them. This you cannot really do with writing, print, and audiovisual media. High-velocity media generate dialogic networks, ones in which messages can be quickly and easily exchanged between nodes. You compose a message and send it. It arrives quickly and is understood, and the recipient composes and sends another response. Thus, messages flow back and forth rapidly and easily. According to our theory, dialogic networks democratize social practices developed in and around them. By democratize, we mean to encourage deliberative and consensual decision-making. The internet is a huge dialogic network made up of millions of smaller dialogic networks. Wikipedia, for example, is one of them. Moving on, internet has a global range and unexcelled coverage. When we talk about the internet, we usually mean the World Wide Web. The web was brought into being hundreds of thousands of years ago the moment one human talked to another. Over time, humans invented new media and used them to create new webs, each larger than the last. They superimposed the new webs on the old, writing on talking, print on writing, audiovisual media on print, and finally the internet, the web on audiovisual media. Although the internet web is probably larger geographically than the audiovisual web, the two are very roughly the same size. What really makes the internet web different from the audiovisual web is not its extent, but rather its density. The internet web is thicker, bushier, woolier than the audiovisual web. More people are connected through internet web and can be connected anytime and also anywhere. Audiovisual channels typically have much larger audiences than internet web. Audiovisual channels typically have much larger audiences than internet channels, but the coverage of the internet web as a whole is greater than that of the audiovisual web. As the audiovisual channels migrate themselves to the internet, the superiority of the web will become all the greater. Internet goes everywhere and soon will reach everyone. According to our theory, extensive networks diversify social practices and values evolved in and around them. On extensive networks, strangers confront one another, learn from one another, and assimilate one another to their worldviews. Sometimes this confrontation leads to conflict, but over an extended period of time, it often leads to the softening of edges and acceptance of diversity. The web squashed the notion that people and things are the same, or even similar, everywhere for good. But it also engendered a new kind of voyeurism. People are more interested in things that are infinite and unknown. This created a desire for what we might call artificial variation, that is exotica, that is purposely contrived simply to surprise, astonish, or shock. Some of this brings no harm to people. For example, the virtual worlds created by online gamers. But some involve dangerous acts simply for the sake of attention. You can see such material in abundance on YouTube and any number of fetish porn sites. Internet also encourages transculturalism. Transculturalism is defined as seeing oneself in the other. Transculturalism permits and even encourages the creation of new unique identity. Next, Internet is a high persistent medium. Unlike spoke words, writing, printing on paper, and audiovisual signals on tape, digital files, the kind that are stored on the Internet, can be copied and archived very quickly, very accurately, and very cheaply. Practically speaking, there is no limit to the amount of information that can be stored. Companies hire people to make sure that their digital files are routinely archived. You never know when you're going to need that document for some purpose, so you archive it. Private corporations record and archive what you do on the Internet using tracking cookies. Persistent media and engender additive networks. According to our theory, additive networks will historicize social practices and values developed in and around them. This means that both awareness and the importance of the past will be heightened. The past, represented in artifacts or imagery, will be in a constant dialogue with the present. The Internet will enable us to preserve more of the past than ever before. In the Internet era, everybody needs to practice reputation management because everyone is a public entity and is closely watched. Being visual on the Internet is a passive process. Data are collected and stored. Next, the Internet is a supremely searchable medium. The ability to store a lot of information is useless if you can't find anything in it. Written, print, and audio-visual archives can be quite capacious, but it's hard to find anything in them. In contrast, Internet, which can store even more information, do have a specialized tool to search for data in their archives quickly, the search engine. Search engine crawls across the Internet to gather information and then uses that information to construct a massive index. So when you tell the engine to find something, such as a string of characters like William, it mechanically looks through the indexes and returns thousands of addresses, URLs to web page that you might want, such as this. However, the search engine has a main advantage that you can anticipate what you were looking for even when you were vague. Search engine records all the strings everyone searches and what they select after the results are returned. This enables it to compile a ranking based on click-through rate. So click-through rate is only one of the factors that the search engine can consider when deciding how to rank URLs returned. It might also consider the amount of traffic a site gets, the number of inbound links a site has, the amount of time people spend on a site, the number of pages they look at on a site, or the rate at which they return to the site. All of these factors are packed together in a search algorithm, a kind of formula the engine uses to guess what you are really looking for when you type William into the search box. In fact, it's almost impossible to hide anything from Internet. People will use the Internet to find out what they need to know, or at least what they think they need to know. You can be pretty sure that what you need to know is somewhere on the Internet. To find it, all you will need is some Google foo, the ability to use a search engine efficiently, and a search engine. So it has a remarkably detailed index. Its index can be searched with blinding speed, and the search results are highly relevant, and the materials themselves are immediately accessible. So this is our conclusion. So Internet has high accessibility, high privacy, high fidelity, high volume, high velocity, high range, high persistence, and high searchability. So people have been waiting for virtual reality for years. They needn't wait any longer because it's here. It's not an immersive environment, but rather a set of web pages through which we can live. Most of the world's nations seem to have learned the lesson taught by print and audiovisual media. Media will do what media do, and attempting to go against their grain will probably lead to failure. This acceptance is one of the reasons the Internet is now virtually everywhere, and virtually everywhere the same. Any nation who tries to block it will eventually fail and suffer from their failure. Eventually it will spread. Everyone will have it, and everyone will believe they will have it.
So here is the Q&A section. Doing ordinary Q&A section is bored, right? So I would like to request you guys to take out your mobile devices or laptop and search for Kahoot.it.
to change the on the screen.
Need more of this. We need to stop this thing.
So are you guys ready? So you key in the game pin and key in your username. Anyone cannot go in this web page. You need to search kahoot.it. Anyone else? Can we start the game? Okay, so we start the game now, yeah. Anybody else? So we'll start the game with 24 players, okay? You need to see the question on the slide. And then you choose your answer. The yellow one is 1990s. The yellow one is right. Writing, right. The yellow one is social media application. So the winners can come in front to claim your prize.
The first one, CT.
Who is CT? Charis.
The second one.
Second phase, Panda.
Panda.
Panda 4อันไหนคนแรกสวัสดีคนแรก
Okay, so congratulations to you all. That's all from us. Thank you.
Okay. First off, just a couple of thoughts is about the presentation and about the subjects they're talking about. It went a little bit long, in fact, quite a bit long. Be sure when you use videos that they really have a good purpose, that they really give us enough to make it worth our while. And probably while the Kahoot was interesting, that took quite a while to do. Hopefully, I haven't seen the PowerPoint, but I do need one point of doing the questions on the PowerPoint is so that everybody has the questions and answers to study for the quizzes. And so the questions and answers should be on the PowerPoint, and I obviously need them so I can put them into the quizzes. That's one of the purposes to have you do them is to help create the quizzes. So hopefully, if they're not on the PowerPoint, that you can put that on the PowerPoint and get me a version with the questions and answers that I can put on Moodle for everybody to have permanently, or at least for their studies. I would say one of the things I explained before, it's very hard for me to grade people doing the Poe chapters because one of the biggest problems with Poe is when you go through a chapter, one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, so what? What does this all mean to me? Why is this important to me? And I think Poe is more for graduate studies, maybe. I don't think he's appropriate for this level of education because what he's talking about doesn't matter to most of you. It's not relevant to most of you. And so I appreciate the hard work they do, and they'll get a decent grade on it. But it makes it hard when one of you is using a textbook that talks about relevant stuff, pretty much, and another one's using a book that talks not about a lot of relevant stuff. There are parts of it that are very interesting. Those of you that still have, of course, we're getting close to the end of the semester. Those of you that still have, some of the Poe stuff, I would emphasize, don't try to cover everything. Again, I did mention that right at the start of the semester. Try to create some so what moments, even if that means you don't cover the entire chapter. Because if you, for example, in some of the cases here and in many of the Poe presentations, you'll go down a whole bunch of stuff that he said, and this 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 and this, and we get none of it. None of it is retained up here because there's no so what. And so a lot of this and this and this and this and this is pretty much meaningless. And particularly if you're not, in any class, even if you were graduate students, this and this and this and this and this is irrelevant. You have to come up with some so what to it. So reading the book, if you were a graduate student, might give you some so what moments more than listening to a presentation. If that presentation tries to do what Poe does in the book, this and this and this and this. And so even if we were in a graduate class, I would urge you to try to come up with the so whats and emphasize the so whats. And I'm not faulting this team. The team did. I'm just saying for everybody, that's the challenge. Probably I've never had a textbook, and frankly, I would not have this textbook if I had a choice. I would not have it. I told our chair that I did not think it was appropriate for this class, and he, I was advised for some reason they felt like they needed to keep it. Part of it is that we have two different classes that that in most universities are not both classes. Like history of mass media and introduction to mass media are essentially the same thing in most universities. So we wouldn't have both of them. And so kind of the second textbook, the Lowell textbook, is really more for the introduction to mass media. But we really shouldn't have both, period. In fact, if I were teaching introduction to mass media, I probably would not cover, because we already have this class, I would make this class, in essence, what Lowell is teaching, and make introduction to mass media much more hands-on than I make this class, because I don't want to waste a class. I don't want to waste your time. Basically, I probably said before, and I emphasize again that I think a university has, it makes, basically makes promises to two groups of people: you and your employers, your future employers. And we say that if you take our classes and learn everything we teach you, you'll be ready for the real world. And to the employers, we're telling them, these are students who got A's, they're ready for the real world. And neither of those is usually true, yet in the way that most universities teach communications. That's according to the employers, not according to just me. According to 90% in my survey with 767 responses, 90% of them said you're not giving the students enough hands-on practice and practical skills. 90%. So it's not a small majority. And so that's why I have problems with this sort of a class anyway. I'm not sure we should even have this sort of class in a university. Get to the stuff that matters. But then with the Poe book, even less so. It's just not, there's nothing in Poe that will prepare you for the future, unless you're going to be a professor. Then maybe. In which case you should probably read it to really totally comprehend what he's trying to tell you. It's all theoretical based and so forth. You're not going to pull something out of Poe and say, aha, I'm going to be a better journalist now. There's nothing there that will make you a better journalist. That's the problem. So I'm sorry. I'm a very blunt person. And so I'm just telling you that this makes it very hard to compare students who are teaching the Lowell chapters versus those that are teaching the Poe chapters, which means I really have to be pretty lenient on the Poe presenters, because it's not their fault. It's not their fault that they have to teach Poe. And it's not my fault. I don't want to teach Poe. But whatever we teach, try to remind yourself that I want to get to the so what. That's one thing I really do appreciate. And if that means in the Poe chapter you get rid of half of it, okay, I don't care. Get rid of half of it. I really don't care. I would rather have you emphasize things that you think have a so what element to them and talk about them in some depth. And those ones maybe get some videos for that go into some depth, than to just tell us all the da-da-da-da-da-da that Poe goes through. That is not relevant to us. So I know it's challenging because most of what he says is da-da-da-da-da. So where's the so what to it? I don't know. Anyway, so the team did a pretty good job, and they'll get a decent grade. But I just expressing my frustration on the whole textbook, and I may even give it less. In another semester, I may not use it, and no matter what anybody says, I may not use it for that reason. Give me some so what, or don't give it to me. Okay, so now my rant is over on that. Talking about some of the content. This book talks a lot about push-pull theory. What in essence is push-pull? Because he talks about it a lot. Anybody want to explain to me what push-pull is? And does it have relevance in the real world? Does it have a so what? The theory. Not the way Poe applies it necessarily, but the theory of push-pull. Does push-pull have what is it, and does it have a place that's worth discussion? Anybody want to venture? We've been presenting a lot of stuff, and this whole book is pretty much based on the theory of push-pull. So anybody? No? Well, in the very simplest words, it's saying that if you want something adopted, or if you want to analyze how things are adopted, that if you, especially using it in a positive way that is actually useful, is that you want to set up both what we call a carrot and a stick. Well, you know what we mean by a carrot and a stick? A carrot and a stick means if you want to get somebody to do something, you whack them with the stick and hold a carrot in front of them that they want to get to. So they want to get to the carrot, like a goat, you might say. You put a carrot in front of a goat. The goat's going to go for the carrot, and if he's not going fast enough, you whip his back end. So you have both a push element to it, and you have his own incentive to get to that carrot. So push-pull has a practical application. It's pretty simple, and in its simplest form, it's quite simple. If you want to introduce, you own a business, and you want to get your employees to start using some new technique or some new software or something, you apply push-pull. You go ahead and you give them incentives to get it done, and you set up some what's the right word? Disincentives anyway. Yeah, some penalties, whatever, if they don't get it done. They have to get it done. So you give them the carrot and the stick. You put the carrot in front of them. If you get to that carrot, you benefit from the carrot. If you don't, we're going to whip the back end a little bit and get you moving along a little bit. So in the simplest form, that's what push-pull is. Pull is using it here to suggest why things have moved forward. Why have things been adopted? So he's using it as an analytical tool rather than an application for a practical application to get people to accept things in the future. So it does have a practical application. And so when he starts talking about, a lot of this theory and presented today and in past presentations, he's basically saying, what pushed this forward and what drew it forward. What were the incentives? What were the disincentives? What were the things that people suffered if they didn't go forward? And what were the things that benefited them if they did go forward? And so he was identifying, these different incentives, negative and positive. And again, it has the theory has good application, perhaps, although there are there have been recent studies that show that push-pull doesn't really work in reality very well. There's a set of studies, I showed it in my other class, my success strategies class, where they've actually shown that if you, even in like problem-solving situations, if they give you, they put you in a team, what they exactly did, they put up people in a team and they gave them a problem-solving challenge. And if they gave them a high reward for being first in the challenge, they actually did worse than if they gave them no reward, which kind of definitely goes contrary to push-pull. You would think, incentives will drive people forward. But their theory is, they've tested this over and over and over again, and people actually have done worse repeatedly when they give them a reward. And what they're thinking is that, and this is, I think, a guess at this point, is that by giving them the incentives, they get so focused on it that they go very left brain. And so these challenges they give them require some right brain activity. And because of the incentives, they're left brain. So they go fully left brain and they cannot see outside the box, so to speak. And because they can't see outside the box, some fairly obvious solutions are not seen because they required right brain. So that's their guess on these tests they've been giving. And I'm not sure that's a fair test either. I still kind of think there's some application to push-pull. But there is evidence that it doesn't work, actually. There's evidence that pushing and pulling people, even the polling, even the positive incentives, as I said in this, that it actually doesn't work very well. Stephen Covey, in one of his I teach that in my success strategies class. I teaches 7 habits of highly effective people. Also came to that conclusion that that incentives don't work in an organization. Not monetary incentives. Incentives of positive reinforcement and things like that. That those work, but trying to reward people with only the top achievers get the bonuses and so forth, those actually don't work very well. And that's what the evidence is coming up with. So it's so in an actual practical business application, push-pull doesn't always work. It's even against what would seem to us as kind of common sense. That push-pull is really a common sense conclusion. That if you push people and pull people at the same time, they're going to move faster. Because we do that with goats and we do that with animals. But you can't actually do that with people very well. Which actually makes the whole internet experience kind of interesting. Because a lot of things that have happened with the internet are not logical. I want you to watch a video, and I was going to show it today, but maybe we do have time. I was going to stop it once in a while and talk about it, which I don't know if I had time to do. It's actually almost 10 years old. It's 9 years old. But the founding co-editor of Wired magazine talks about the miracle of the internet and where it's taking us, and there's lots of issues to talk about on it. I might go ahead and start it now, but I don't think I'll go through it fast enough that, even though it's only 20 minutes long or whatever, we have 20 minutes, there's too much to discuss in it. That actually did relate to what we spoke about today. It's what the internet is doing to society, in a sense, what we're becoming as society with internet. It brings up lots of wonderful and scary things. And Poe touched on some of the elements, but Kevin Kelly, the person I was talking about, the Wired executive editor, brings it out in a way that actually I've watched the video probably 3 or 4 times, and last night or the night before I watched it again. Actually, as part of this book I'm co-authoring, it occurred to me that he had some ideas that might be valuable, and when I watched it again, it just hit me right smack in the face. Wow, I never got all of that before. So I'd say, at least 3 or 4 times I've watched it, and this was the most meaningful ever, and it's a 9-year-old video. But now looking backwards and seeing what he was seeing forwards, a very intuitive man, very forward-thinking man, as you would imagine somebody who was executive editor of Wired magazine would be. He had insights that most of us didn't fully grasp until now. And he was telling us about it. This is what's going to happen. This is what your future is. And he was telling us 9 years ago. I might start that now, but there are a couple of things I want to talk about. The privacy issues is one of the things he talks about, and so be alert to that when I do play that video or assign it to you, whatever the case might be, is that he's saying that we can't really escape the privacy issue. We can't do what the video suggested. It won't work. Because the very nature of the way the internet is proceeding, when it first started, it was a network of networks. You were hooking up networks. Then you started hooking up computers. And now we're hooking up ideas. And so we're actually keying into the ideas, and any document that goes online now, part of it you can see through Google. Obviously, just analyzing every word, every sentence, every idea. But through programming like XML, it actually programs it to make it even more so. And so this whole process of he calls it, Kevin Kelly calls it, we're reinventing right now the internet to where it's becoming something more powerful than it was before. It's no longer a network of networks. It's no longer even a network of computers. It is now a network of ideas. And those ideas, it's reaching in every aspect of our lives to grab those ideas. His conclusion, which I never caught before until the last few days, is that we're going to a place where privacy is almost impossible without dropping out of this whole thing. You have to drop out of the computer age in order to be private. And I think he's right. I think that's the conclusion that maybe one of the conclusions that hit me in the face that I didn't really think about, that didn't occur to me before. But now that when we were experiencing things like WikiLeaks and all these hacks that are going in and telling all the secrets of governments and all sorts of stuff, if governments can't protect their ideas, how about you and me? If governments can't protect their secrets, how about you and me? He's saying that it's inevitable. And in fact, it occurred to me, one of the ideas that I had that kind of jumped beyond what he was talking about, and because I'm talking about marketing in these chapters, marketing today, one of the number one elements of marketing is personalization. People expect now to have their communication, even though it's automated to a large degree, their communication with a company totally personalized. If you go on Amazon, you expect Amazon to know what you want. You expect them to be able to talk to you by name. You expect lots of things that are very personalized now, and they are this big data that used to scare us. And in this video suggesting we should be scared by big data, except for this video, I say most of you have kind of forgotten about the idea of big data, and you're enjoying the benefits of big data. The personalization of big data by corporations, and when you're meandering through the internet, it's becoming more and more personalized. You're seeing what you want to see more and more because that's what they do with big data. Yes, they do know exactly where you go on the internet, and they're using that to take you where you want to go. And so there's two sides of that coin. Yes, they're snooping in where you're going, and they're helping you go where you want to go. So people are actually, they like the results of big data. Even though this video suggests it's a scary, terrible thing, that's not, the masses in today's world are not only accepting it, they're liking it. And you have to think about that. They're not just accepting it, they're liking it. So what does that mean to the future? My conclusion was there's a lot here to study and talk about in academia, because that's part of what we have to, the conclusion I have to come to with I have to come to conclusions in these chapters to suggest areas of research and academic discussion. And certainly, if we are giving up all of our privacy, which is what Kevin Kelly is saying we are, we're going to almost give up all of our privacy in the process of the internet becoming an idea-to-idea connection. It will be more and more difficult to hide things. We will become a very, very transparent society. I don't know. There are some governments that try to control this more than other governments. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't even know. I don't even know right now. It is a very confusing thing. The internet has so many benefits to it, and yet it actually, you also can think forward to the future. Some of the things they're talking about. Internet of Things. So basically, not right now, things like cars are connected to the internet. Pretty soon our refrigerators will be connected to the internet. Our shoes will be connected to the internet, literally, to tell us how far we're walking and how much energy we're using, how many calories we're losing, all this sort of stuff. The things are going to start being connected, and so our whole world is going to be part of the internet. Kevin Kelly says, in essence, kind of what, there was a quote by, who was it quoting? I'm not sure. Maybe the team can tell me, but the idea that we are the internet, that I think I don't know whether Kelly took it from them or they took it from Kelly, but basically Kelly said that same thing, that because of the the transparency, the lack of privacy and so forth, and the fact that all of the Internet of Things, that everything's connected to the Internet, we're all involved in the Internet every day with everything we do, that we are part of this great machine. We are, he calls it the one. It sounds like a scientific, like a science fiction, scary science fiction story. We are the one. We are part of this great machine that we call the Internet. In the future, they're talking about things like putting chips into our brain to help us learn better and retain better and access better and also communicate to the one better. Some people are getting chips in just for GPS purposes, so they can't get lost, so to speak. That's on a voluntary basis right now, but it might not be. Is it too far-fetched to think that a government might decide that it's to their benefit to put a chip in your body someplace to know where you're at all times? That's not too far-fetched of an idea. One way to cut down on crime, for example. How can you commit a murder if everybody knows exactly where you're at when the murder's committed? Pretty much to eliminate murders, because they would know you were at the scene when it happened. If that chip also had, some other aspects to it, like could tell whether you're alive or not. So they're doing this for your safety. They put the chip into you to see if you're alive, whether your temperature is at a level that they consider appropriate, or whether it's measuring maybe your pulse or something at the same time. So now they have a reason to put into that chip your health now. So even that tells, this person is dying. So let's send out the ambulance immediately. That seems like a positive thing. It'd be hard to argue that's not a positive thing. And indeed, and then if they have the GPS in as part of our chip, then again, who's going to commit a murder? That person just died. That person was there when he died. So you can come up with all sorts of logical reasons why they should do this, but also scary ways they could be used against us. Again, science fiction material. This Brave New World sort of stuff. So it's a lot of questions, a lot of things to think about, a lot of benefits that we're enjoying because of it. And as we look into the future, where's it taking us? I don't really know. Like I say, I can imagine some very scary scenarios. The chips could also, they're getting good enough that it's not too far in the future where the chips could even control some of our thinking. Not only help us to learn, the benefit, the push or the pull would be, you're going to learn faster. We can teach you a lesson. We can teach you a new language in 5 minutes. We're just going to put a chip in your brain, and you knew a new language, or whatever. But then, what else can it do if it has that capability? They're talking about making body parts with 3D printing. That sounds like a good thing. I don't know. Where can it lead to? I'm not sure where technology is taking us. It's a lot of unknowns out there, and we're maybe getting. One of the fears has been that we are progressing technologically faster than we are progressing emotionally, socially. In other words, we don't have. It would all be great if we were perfect people. It'd all be great if we had perfect government leaders. It'd all be great if. But what if we don't have perfect government leaders? What if we're not perfect? What if we decide if people decide to abuse this power? What if the wrong people put chips in us? Lots of scary ideas too. They were talking about again, part of this idea. There's research on one hand that says we're addicted to our cell phones, to our mobile phones, that we're addicted to them. And there's evidence that indeed we are addicted to our mobile phones if you want to look at it from that way. But if you look at it from the Kevin Kelly perspective, that was pretty much inevitable. He was pretty much saying that's inevitable. You provide this technology to everybody, you will be part of it, and you won't be able to help yourselves. So we can't go anyplace without our mobile phones now. We're attached to them. They're part of us, and that makes us part of the machine because the mobile phones are tied to the machine. In most cases, 24 hours a day, our mobile phone is tying us to the machine, to the one. And we're afraid to be without our connection to the one. So that raises issues. Is it really an addiction, or is it a total, is humankind changing in their very nature? Where you could call it an addiction, but it's actually almost an evolution. Maybe it's more of an evolution than an addiction. This is who we are now. That we can't escape the one. We are part of it, and we want to be part of it. We are choosing to be part of the one. Even if we're not sure where we're going with it and where it's going to take us. We are part of the one. In America, people are are connected to media 12 hours a day. So half of their day, they're connected to some kind of media. And I would say, in a sense, that's not even true. It's probably closer to 24 hours a day. They may not be using the media, but they are connected. The mobile phone is right by their bed, for example. They're within hand length of media all the time. They're actually participating in the media 12 hours a day in some way. And that itself tells us something about the changing human nature. The one video was cute about, how things have changed. I'm not sure how useful it was, but it was cute about how things have changed before and after the internet. And now we're having to push people out the door. Get out, go outside, go and play, go do something. And my wife the other day was going out these glass doors they have here in our apartment. She was going outside and she had her mobile phone and she ran into the window next to the door. And headlong, bam. I imagine some of you have done that. We're so connected to this mobile phone we're carrying that we're not paying a lot of attention sometimes. It's a danger for people that are driving. My son uses his mobile phone far, far, far too much while he's driving. He scares me to death when I'm driving with him. I don't want him driving because he's on his mobile phone the whole time, not paying attention. And so in places where people do a lot of driving, like America, it's dangerous, very dangerous. Even though they pass laws against it, they're still doing it. Because sometimes when you're too close to something, it becomes a blur. So I was interested in hearing the actual dates of the World Wide Web. I knew it was either 1989 or the early 1900s when the World Wide Web was created and the first browsers were created. But so it says 1993. And in early 1995 was when I started teaching teaching people how to use browsers. At that time, the first one, and it also is interesting the fact that both the World Wide Web and the inventors of the World Wide Web and the inventor of the first browser, Mosaic, did not do it for profit. That's one of the amazing things about the internet is people are doing more and more without a profit incentive, without the push-pull. They're doing it because they want to do something valuable. Wikipedia is one of those examples. Basically, it's driving all the paid encyclopedias out of business because they can't compete with Wikipedia. Certainly in amount, the Encyclopedia Britannica had something like 200,000 stories in the Encyclopedia Britannica, but Wikipedia 10 years ago had 20 million already. So there's no way that even something like Encyclopedia Britannica can keep up with Wikipedia in the expansiveness of its content. And yet when they did a study, they found that the accuracy of it was almost as, in fact, they found that the accuracy in some cases was better than most encyclopedias, because it has a self-editing process to it. If somebody disagrees with what somebody put in, they can go in and say, no, that's not right, this is right. And they kind of create a impromptu jury as to who's right about this article. And so there's not just is it created by amateurs in the creation of the documents, but it's also edited by amateurs and the self-correcting by amateurs, and all of it for nothing. At the time, there's a TED.com video where the founder of Wikipedia was saying that at that time, and that was again about 2008, that at that time they had one full-time employee, and they actually made him full-time employee out of mercy. He was doing it for free. After he was working someplace else, and he was their technical guru, and he was doing it for free. But they finally just said, you don't have a life. You have to have a life too. And so they put him on staff. He was their only paid employee in 2008. One person, one IT guru. That was it. And he didn't ask to be paid. They made him be paid. So Wikipedia and things like that are a miracle. That's again one of the things that this Kevin Kelly was pointing out, is if you think back in that short period of time when he gave his address, the World Wide Web had existed for 5,000 days, and so he first off reviewed what miracles had occurred in 5,000 days, and then he looked forward 5,000 days, and that's where he was talking about all these changes that were going to happen in the next 5,000. He was very accurate. In fact, we are just ending the next 5,000. We're right about the next 5,000 days right now. We're coming in close to the end of those. What would it be if that was in, what did I say? Was that 2007 he said that? I'm trying to remember now. I downloaded in 2008. I think he may have done it in 2006. So it's actually 11 years, I think, since he gave his presentation. So 11 times however many. Yeah, we're still not to 5,000 days quite, I don't think. But we're getting close to the end of the next 5,000 days. And his predictions are very, very close to what he saw was going to happen. Anyway, it was interesting then that I started not only teaching how to use the browsers and so forth, which I couldn't help but think as I was telling my involvement with this to the other class, or maybe it was this class. Again, I was thinking that maybe the browsers were older than that, because it seemed by the time I started teaching it in April of 1995. I started teaching people that were being laid off from the nuclear industry, teaching them how to use the internet, and soon after that, creating web pages and creating multimedia web pages. And I didn't realize I was a pioneer. I put it that way. I was curious, but I didn't realize to what degree I was a pioneer. But it was, having lived through that, it's still, looking back, it's amazing how much has happened in those 5,000 days up to Kevin Kelly's talk, and now since then, how it has totally changed the world. If one thing, if Poe has done anything, is helped us to come up to that appreciation of how long it took to go from the age of speech to the age of manuscript, how long it took to go from the age of manuscript to the age of print, how long it took to go from the age of print to the age of visual, and then how quickly things changed at that point. The audiovisual age really isn't that old, but now the internet age, in just such a short time, has totally changed the world, and it's going in a direction that is, to some degree, incomprehensible to us. How quickly it's moving us forward into something that we don't fully understand. Part of it, in fact, is tied very closely to robotics, certainly the technologies, but also the communication being developed for robots is directly tied to the internet. I was riding on the train into KL yesterday, and I don't know if it's accurate, but there was a statistic put up in their little TV sets in the train that by 2030, 800 million jobs in the world will be lost to robots. 800 million. Almost 1 billion jobs will be lost to robots. I don't know if that's accurate. It may even happen sooner, because we're not very good at predicting how quick the technology goes into effect. Once it takes off, that tipping point that we've talked about, that tipping point hits, and bam, it's an avalanche. It's not a tipping point, it's an avalanche. So what does that mean to us? I was just writing on Facebook today about the problems of trying to help people to succeed if they're not helping themselves. Specifically, I was talking about primarily about the African Americans who live in the inner cities. A lot of their culture is very self-destructive, and they're not advancing. They don't want to be told that they can succeed in the American dream. They don't want to be told that. I had a friend from Kazakhstan. I may have told you this story. I had a friend from Kazakhstan that went to Michigan State University for a semester, and she made the comment in her class that it was still possible in America for somebody who worked hard to achieve the American dream. And she was told she had to apologize to the class, because the class, being dominated by people that in the American classification was considered liberal, did not want that narrative. They did not want to be told that African Americans in the inner city could succeed if they tried. Although there's lots of cases where they have. People with the right attitude have succeeded, despite whatever problems might have. And a lot of the problems are self-inflicted. High crime rates that are black on black. They're not white on black. It's black on black. By far, the greatest crime is not white on black by any means. That's minuscule. It's black on black in America, and single parent families is a problem sociologically and psychologically. That's nobody made them do that. In a sense, actually, welfare made them do it, because welfare penalized mothers who were receiving welfare if they had a husband in the house too. They had to count his income, and so it gave them an incentive to kick the husband out. And so almost 80% in some cities, 80% of the children are born into single parent families. In a sense, that is white people's fault, white Democrats' fault, who think that you can just throw money at a situation and solve it, because it's actually, in the decades that we've tried to solve poverty in that way, it has become worse, not become better. And now the attitude is, like I said, where you have to actually apologize to say that people in America can still achieve the American dream. Yet all the immigrants know that. All the people that want to go to America believe that, and they're doing it. There was a list. What prompted this was a list on Facebook of 17 nationalities of immigrants who make more money than the average white person in America. Indians, Japanese, Chinese. Basically went down the list of all the immigrants who were making more money on average than American whites. 17 different groups. And one of my friends from Kazakhstan challenged me, yeah, but some of those are small numbers. They're less than 1 million. And my response is, that's not the point. The point is the American dream is still alive. You can still achieve success in America because of its free economy and so forth if you work hard. My friend from Kazakhstan who got told that she had to apologize to her class was right. They were wrong. That it's kind of this what's the right word for it? Kind of a victimhood that people in the inner cities have adopted, and they relish in their victimhood. That we're victims of the system. Some of the African Americans went to the president of a university recently and tried to get him to stop bringing in so many real Africans, because the real Africans still believed in the American dream. So the real Africans believed in the American dream, And so that kind of screwed up the narrative of the African Americans who were trying to say the American dream doesn't work anymore because of all the persecution or whatever they want to say. But the real Africans coming to America are achieving some of the highest success in American universities of any groups, including the Chinese. The Africans coming to America are achieving very high levels of success in American universities. And so that totally destroys this narrative that the inner city African Americans want to relish in. So anyway, but in talking about all this, I also still, a lot of the people that are going to universities in America are not going into areas that are going to be very useful in the future. Or people there's all sorts of, there's so many people in America can be replaced by robots, or they're already being challenged. People that are going into history. What do you do with a history degree in America? They're already finding that it's hard to get a job in America. Already. And they've spent their 4 years or 6 years or 7 years or 8 years getting their degrees in history. And if you're not a professor, you don't know what to do with your degrees. And then again, you get the problem with people being replaced by robots. You get all this sort of stuff. You're going to get the situation. Clayton Christensen, we'll talk about him in the next couple of weeks. He predicts that almost all higher education will soon be over the internet. That universities are going to close down their brick and mortar facilities. They won't exist anymore. It'll all be on the internet. I agree with him. I just don't know when. It's a question, and I don't think he really had the prediction of when it will happen. But it's almost inevitable that universities are going to go online, and they're going to close down these buildings. These brand new, beautiful buildings here are going to be closed down because it's going to be so much more practical to do it over the internet. Less expensive in every way. And part of that every way is that you can reuse professors' lectures. And so, in some ways, professors will be, it's a great fear of educators that the internet and that technology will replace them. To some degree, that's justified. It's possible, not right away by any means. I was the distance learning coordinator at the last university, and one of the things that I've explained to people that actually current research is saying that if you take the real professor out of the process, the value of your education, the monetary value of it collapses. You don't expect to pay hardly anything if you go to Coursera, for example. No matter how good the professors, if they're not live, if they don't come on live to talk to you in person, their value drops down to where you won't pay more than a couple $100 for a course at the most on Coursera. Beautiful, wonderful courses. You're paying $200 for a course there. But you take the real person, you take the real live person out of the process, the value collapses. And so for the foreseeable future, my proposal was no class should ever be all online, ever. Because if you want to protect the jobs of professors, you have to protect the value of the class, and the value of the class is a live professor. And so it's not going to happen real quickly that professors will be replaced bad professors will be replaced by good professors who will teach millions of people maybe. That's kind of happening already with this Bangladesh Xiamen Khan. How many of you have gone to Khan Academy? I've used his, I think I asked that question before, but lots of people are going to Khan Academy for high school or maybe a little bit higher than high school education because he's an incredible teacher. And he's putting together an incredible curriculum that is, in many cases, schools now in America, some of them are flipping their classroom. They're letting Salman Khan teach the content, and then they have discussions and projects and stuff in class. They're flipping the classroom with Khan Academy because he does such a good job. And he was actually never trained as an educator. He was, I think he was in the financial world or something, but he's a techie in the financial world. And he turned out to be one of the best educators in the world. Bangladesh American, again, success story of an immigrant. But so he's changing the world. There's a lot of people that would prefer to get their education from Salman Khan on Khan Academy than going to a school. And he's just getting more and more on there all the time and getting better and better all the time. The same thing's going to happen at the higher levels too, as we have expert professors become very best. Okay, we're out of time. Perhaps we'll get into that video. We have some more time as we go towards the end of this semester, and so I may still not assign Kevin Kelly as homework. I will just keep it for another day. But we're going to have more time for discussing these bigger issues, like what he's presented. There will be a couple of weeks when we only have one presentation. The last week we have no presentation, so we'll have a little more time to talk about what this all means. The so what of this class is what does this all mean to us, because that's important. Okay, thank you. Thank you.